Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
ABC News contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett joins me now for more on this. Brad, so far this suspect appears to have no direct connection to the victim. So how do investigators go about trying to uncover the motive here?
Well, that's a good question, unless he's provided them with one. I'll tell you, Diane, this case has a different direction to it than probably any other homicide you and I have talked about. I mean, homicides tend to be driven by rage, revenge, greed, jealousy, etc. This is a crime that seems to me that the person really, it's something they really wanted to do. In other words, like, if you can believe this, satisfaction from committing murder. That does fit the profile of serial killers. I'm not suggesting this person charged is a serial killer. I'm only saying that the identity factor of where you identify with the crime, you live the crime, you experience it. I suspect if he was in this conversation with us, he could give you every detail as to what happened inside that house, how he got in the house, how he got out, who he attacked first, how he attacked them, did any of them attack him, if that's the case. So you're talking about an entirely different type of individual.
Police say they identified him through DNA technology and tracked him down through the car. But this arrest still took weeks. Could the fact that the suspect was studying criminology and criminal justice, it has a certain level of expertise there, could that present challenges in this case?
I doubt it. Well, first of all, he apparently left his DNA at the scene, which I would have predicted his DNA would have been at the scene, only because in working dozens of stabbing homicides, it's very difficult to stab, in this case, 4 people multiple times and not cut yourself. And so I think they found his DNA at the scene. He has no record, so his DNA is not on file, but through genetic genealogy, they were able to track down through family records his DNA. So you have a DNA hit and you have the car that was placed at the scene, and I think between the two is probably the basis of the probable cause.
All right, Brad Garrett, this is a case we will be talking a lot about going forward. I'm sure we appreciate your analysis as always. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
For weeks, a white Hyundai Elantra was the only clue released by police in the University of Idaho quadruple murders case. Now, newly released security video shows what could be suspect Bryan Kohberger's white Elantra driving past the crime scene the day of the stabbings. The video shows what appears to be a white vehicle driving by, slowing down near the King Road home. In an affidavit released last week, investigators say Kohberger's phone pinged in the area of the off-campus home at about 9 o'clock the morning of the murders. Court documents also say multiple security cameras near the murder scene caught video of a similar vehicle driving by the home at least 4 times between 3:29 and 4:20 the morning of the murders. Experts say the video shows the vehicle speeding away from the crime scene area at about 4:20 a.m., which, according to the affidavit, is right after the murders likely occurred. More than a month later, on December 15th, Kohberger was pulled over while driving his white Elantra. At the time of the traffic stop, Kohberger was in Indiana, traveling with his father from Washington to his family home in Pennsylvania.
Coming from Washington State University? And you're going where? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
After Kohberger's arrest on December 30th, investigators confirmed his white Hyundai Elantra was seized as authorities searched his parents' home in Pennsylvania. Kohberger is expected to appear in Latah County Court on Thursday of this week. You can watch that right here on Law and Crime Network.
One of the biggest leaks in the Idaho case so far might finally lead us towards what the motive might have been in the killings. A law enforcement source tells People magazine that investigators now have digital evidence that suspect Bryan Kohberger was persistently DMing one of the 4 victims before the murders took place on November 13th. Now, the source does not identify which one of the 4 victims was receiving these DMs, but those who've been following the case very closely, people have already been pointing this out online. News Nation reported, you might remember, that Kaylee Gonzalez, her injuries were far more severe than those of Maddie, Xana, and Ethan's. Now, the source told People magazine Steve Heller, I'll read the quote here, he slid into one of the girl's DMs several times, but she didn't respond. Basically, just him saying, hey, how are you? But he did it again and again. The source also acknowledged that the recipient of these messages, again, one of the 4 victims, might not have seen those messages on social media. It's important to note, too, that this is a single law enforcement source. In the article, they make no mention of a second source to corroborate, and whoever leaked this information to People magazine, they risked their law enforcement career in the process, given the gag order that exists right now in Idaho with this case. Now, if true, these DMs, valuable evidence for prosecutors, but again, leaves major questions. Why did the suspect kill 3 more people in the house, and then also, 2, leave 2 roommates completely unharmed? We'll continue to follow what's going on with the Idaho case. You can follow right here on social media, the very latest as well, on WFLA.com, the WFLA app.
Stunning new revelations and another possible connection between suspected killer Bryan Kohberger and college students killed at the University of Idaho. Sources tell People magazine that in the weeks leading up to the November slayings in Moscow, suspect Bryan Kohberger ate at the restaurant where 2 of the victims worked. A former employee at the Mad Greek says that Kohberger came in at least twice. He stood out because of his strict vegan diet. Now, it's unclear if either Madison Mogen or Xana Kernodle ever waited on Kohberger. Law enforcement told People that they're aware of the visits and are collecting surveillance video. This revelation comes just days after a source said that Kohberger had direct messaged at least one of the victims on Instagram multiple times, but never got a response. Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were stabbed to death in their off-campus home. More than a month later, Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He'd been attending Washington State University pursuing a PhD in criminology. He was extradited back to Idaho and now faces murder charges. My co-host Brian Buckmeyer, Terry Austin, they join me now. It's good to see you both. Terry, I'll start with you. Social media may have led Kohberger straight to the victims, but the question now is, what can people do? What can they do to protect themselves on platforms like TikTok and Instagram?
Well, you know, we don't know for a fact that social media did lead the investigators to Kohberger or led Kohberger to the victims, but we do know that you can protect yourselves. You can be self-protective. In other words, don't put personally identifiable information on your social media. There's no reason to put your date of birth down for any app that you're using, and there's no reason to put the location on unless you are in a lift and someone needs to find you. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that social media companies should be held responsible for some of the content that goes on. Right now there's a federal law, Section 230, and it says that social media content is just something that the individuals who post are now responsible for. So there are things that you can do.
Well, hopefully people take that advice. Brian, let's just go back to Kohberger for a second, because every week we learn a little bit more about his connections to the victims. How is this going to affect the June preliminary hearing that we talked about?
Well, Jesse, I think it's all going to come in. The preliminary hearing isn't just based on what they knew at the time of his arrest or when he was arraigned. It's everything coming up to that June 26th. And hey, I've been trying to find angles. I know I'm the resident defense attorney here, but as the circumstantial evidence starts to pile on top of itself, I cannot see a way out for Bryan Kohberger here. It seems like every angle, every bit of information, every little bit of source is pointing to the direction that he's a predator and might have been stalking his prey.
Never good when Brian Buckmeyer can't find a defense. That's always bad news. I should tell you that Law and Crime Daily has also learned that the judge in Latah County, Idaho, has amended the gag order that was already in place. You see, the updated order now prohibits attorneys representing the victims' families from discussing anything about the case publicly. You might recall that when Kohberger was arrested in December, the judge put an order in place saying that anyone involved with the case, like attorneys and law enforcement, couldn't talk to the media. But now that extends to the families of Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan. This comes after interviews from outspoken parents and lawyers were seen by people all over the world. The order lasts until there's a verdict or the judge decides to amend the order again.
For the first time since their son was arrested for the murders of 4 college friends in Idaho, the parents of 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger are speaking out, writing, "First and foremost, we care deeply for the 4 families who have lost their precious children," adding, "We will love and support our son and brother. We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence."
How are they feeling about all the things that they're reading about their son?
They're trying to stay off of the media. What they're hearing is not the Bryan they know and love, so it's really out of character.
Kohberger's initial public defender says his client, who is eager to be exonerated, was arrested Friday at his parents' home after driving cross country with his father on December 17th, a trip the attorney said was planned. The suspect was studying for a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University, less than 10 miles from the crime scene. Undergrad Austin Morrison says Kohberger was a teaching assistant in one of Morrison's classes. There was a screenshot showing a paper Kohberger graded back in November.
I didn't see him in class. He introduced himself. He did seem rather quiet to me.
According to the university, police have executed search warrants at the suspect's office and on-campus apartment. Neighbors there who do not want to be identified say he was polite and seemed normal, but often made extreme noises. He was cleaning or using tools in the middle of the night.
It's just very loud sound, so we kind of stop. And then sometimes I just think, okay, what is happening?
Before his time at WSU, Kohberger graduated with a master's degree in criminal justice from the State University in Pennsylvania. You'll know what they knew about Hillary, telling BBC News, staff have had admits that would pop up when Kohberger would his hand. And this guy makes creepy comments.
Brought back to Idaho.
Well, according to his public defender in Pennsylvania, the earliest could be Tuesday night. Once Kohberger is brought back to Idaho, he says it could take a little bit longer to figure out what's going to happen next. Back to you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
For Bryan Kohberger's Pullman apartment and his Washington State University office. The 28-year-old is accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students in their Moscow home in the early morning hours of November 13th.
The search warrant showed investigators were looking for any evidence that could connect Kohberger to these murders. And those include photos of the victims, electronic or paper evidence showing an interest in murder, blood, or other body fluids, and dark clothing, of course.
Our Abby Davis joining us now. Abby, we know investigators took several items from Kohberger's apartment, but his office is a different story on WSU's campus.
That's completely right. They actually didn't take anything from his campus apartment. They did, however, take more than 10 items from his personal apartment. So no items from his campus office and items from his apartment. I talked with a DNA expert about those items and how they might impact the investigation.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree.
In some criminal cases, DNA plays a big role, something DNA expert and BSU professor Greg Kampikin knows firsthand.
DNA is really good at telling us who may have been the original contributor of a piece of evidence.
In some cases, helping prove or disprove someone's possible connection to a crime. Like 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, who's charged with killing University of Idaho students Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez.
Bryan, what are you doing?
A newly unsealed search warrant issued the night before Kohberger's arrest details what police took from his Pullman, Washington apartment. Kohberger was a Washington State University graduate student studying criminology.
They're looking for transfer from the crime scene or potentially victims to the apartment.
Here's the list. You'll see police found all sorts of items: a black glove, 2 cuttings from an uncased pillow with reddish-brown stain, and 2 mattress covers with multiple stains. Police also found several possible hair strands, both human and dog. A probable cause affidavit stated Gonzalez's dog was home at the time of the murders, but found in a different room.
I'm interested in the animal hair. They are probably going to be fairly confident if they match a hair to a particular dog.
Hampikin says both sides may use this evidence to build their case either for or against Kohberger.
If the police are testing a lot of evidence that they consider important, and at this point they have a suspect, they're interested in finding more evidence that validates their arrest. They may accidentally find evidence that invalidates it.
The strength of that evidence will be decided during the legal process.
DNA may tell you more about what happened, and that's for the jury to decide. I can't decide that as a DNA expert.
I misspoke earlier. Police didn't take anything from his campus office. They did take items, however, from his apartment. Now, in the documents, the judge said there wasn't any need to keep these search warrants under wraps since Latah County unsealed the probable cause affidavit earlier this month. And we know, once again, that probable cause affidavit shows